Hey, it's Chris Liege Games. Let's do this. So this shirt is appropriately themed for this video because we are looking back at the past month of June 2022. So I can tell you my top games that have made it to the table in my collection, as well as my top picks of crowdfunding for the month as a whole and why. Some obvious choices, but we're going to talk about them anyway, where they're at post-campaign now. How do you feel immediately afterwards as well? And I'm going to give you 4 of each. The top 4 campaigns and the top 4 games that hit the table. Let's do this. Let's go over to the crowdfunding first, and so I can talk to you about this, and this is no surprise. And now these are games that ended funding in June. So it's a little bit, border, depending on how you want to do this, divided up. But this is Castles of Burgundy Special Edition, right? Awakened Realms, it raised over $3 million, 2.9 million euros. Freaking amazing from that aspect for a game that's, just literally gotten a reprint 3 years ago that people are clamoring for, that people want deluxified. This is the epitome of deluxification in this hobby now. You can make an argument that you can, maybe it's CMON, maybe it's all those other ones, but no, I'm going to make the argument that it's actually this, because at least with CMON's games, they're not remaking games that are already out deluxified. This, Bezier games, this is the trend of things we're going to see, and this is why it's the most interesting from that aspect. Not because I think it's going to be the best game. I mean, it's already a well-known game. It's getting a little bit of new gameplay content, giving you a bunch of the other expansions that you already have, but it's pricing it at about, 3 to 4 times the amount, even if you just want to get in, not even get everything as blinged out as you could. And that scares me, as we're seeing prices for regular editions go up. We're seeing prices for retail stuff go up. We're seeing the average crowdfunding price for a game go up. Now we are seeing an absolute tremendous increase from a crowdfunding deluxification standpoint. Does it matter how beautiful your game is? Does it matter the artwork additions? And this is going to split people down the line. I mean, I'm in that comment. This doesn't do it for me, but I'm looking at the new copy of The Quest for El Dorado from Ravensburger. The Ravensburger edition is the old one. The new one with Vincent Dutrait's art is going to be coming out I'm hopefully in North America in the near future, but it's over in Europe already, and people are importing it, paying like double the cost of the game itself just to get a copy of it because it's that much prettier to look at. And they're redoing all the expansions too. So why is that any different? I don't know. But this is expensive. This is expensive art. And I will argue that miniatures are the art here, not only with the actual art. I will never make the argument this is not a good deal. Awakened Realms consistently puts the base pledge for any of their campaigns as a fantastic deal. These are all the expansions that you're going to be getting. Now, allegedly, it's all going to be in one box, so this is all going to be self-contained. I can't see, though, how long this is going to take, because contrary to all of those other games that they have put out or CMON's putting out, this is a done game, except for the new expansion, right? So in theory, this should be a very short turnaround. And it says March 2023, which is a lot longer than I would have expected. But with the other Awakened Realms production issues, I mean, we're still not going to probably have ISS Vanguard before 2023. We're not even, I don't even have my copy of Second Wave Ether Fields yet. So I have to imagine that all of the other things in the queue could potentially bump this further, or the opposite is going to happen and it's going to bump up the queue and people are going to be irate that they don't have, or that they're concerned that the resources are being spent here as opposed to elsewhere. So there's a no-win situation from that aspect. If you want the classic version, that's, wait for maybe a retail version like Nemesis sort of came out. Maybe it'll be cheaper, maybe it won't, but for $10 more with miniatures, if you were going to get it, as I mentioned, that's the price point you get it at. You don't need the Sundrop, you don't need the Majestic Pledge with all of the other upgrades, 3D terrain, hex tokens, neoprene mat. You may want them, not going to argue that, but do you need them? Well, you don't need any of this stuff. That's a whole nother video. But here you go. Everything that got included as a stretch goal, the individual add-ons. But that's why it's the most interesting game of the month. Not just because it raised a bunch of money, not just because it was Awakened Realms, not just because it had miniatures, but because of the ramifications across the industry as a whole. And that's why I talk to you about the games, not just for the games themselves, but the impact that they have. If you've watched any of my other videos where I don't just talk about games. That is number 1. Number 2, arcs. Arcs. Leder games, Oath in Space. Oath in Space over a 3-session campaign game with upgradable, with asymmetry, with changing dynamics, with changing win conditions, with progressive scenarios, but you can also play as a one-off, which was kind of not really widely, super thought well of from the few people that got the preview copies and the prototypes. But the campaign, the sessions, and as with Leder Games, they offered an online experience during the campaign to get people's appetites whetted, and it definitely whetted people's appetites to the tune of $1.5 million and 15,000 people, because their pledge levels were nowhere near as high, and you could get the whole thing for $100 if you really wanted, and if you really want some Arc miniatures, you can get it for another $50. But that's really the question, is this is supposed to be a more accessible Root Oath. The accessibility for both of those games is much higher in terms of the learning curve and just the overall knowledge curve. And so it's trying to integrate that slowly through a campaign session style game situation. Now, obviously, similar to all the other campaigns that Leder Games does, is there's no exclusives, but you will get it at a better price. That is guaranteed. That is no question. So if you're really one of those value people, you're going to save money, or you're going to flip it for a small profit at worst. Not that I like doing that at all, because that's not the motive behind crowdfunding. That's not the motive behind buying games in the first place. I buy them to play them, not to collect them, to store them, or to make a profit on. If you want to do that, you can. It's not too difficult, but it's also not the reason I'm in this hobby. Battling, campaigns, everything else along the lines. Here are all the reviews, here are all the thoughts, here's everything. And the interesting aspect was, as I highlighted during the campaign, when this page originally launched, Space Biff actually had a relatively not glowing praise of it, and they actually did not include it. And within a few days, there was sort of some uproar, some little clamoring like, hey, why didn't you include the one that was negative, or the one that was perceived to be more negative? It wasn't negative, but it was more critical. And then they added it. So I give them kudos for adapting and changing and being willing to put it on there. And they also included his thoughts on the campaign that was updated later during this actual campaign. End of 2023, though. I didn't actually see this date during the crowdfunding campaign. Wowzers! End of 2023. Means we're getting it in 2024. I have plenty of stuff between now and then. I'll somehow manage, one of those things. I'm not going to starve, as they say. But another interesting test of the market, and hopefully another easier accessibility game from Leder Games, because the other two that I mentioned have definitely been the opposite of that. And as popular as they are also not wide niche, and this one is trying to appeal to more of that broad-based retail market, if you will, from the less complex side of things. So that's number 2. Number 3, I have to talk about it because Board Game Tables is, of one of the top companies, probably top 10 companies of crowdfunding that have raised the most money over the last year to 2 years. Board Game Tables is probably not one of those that you would list on that, but I would argue that they're probably on that list. And they've just proven it here with $500,000 for expansions of games that they put out previously. Kabuto Sumo, On Tour, Bites, and QE. Games that are anything but a household name. Games that are relatively well received, but also fly under a lot of people's radar. Not many people are going to say this is my favorite game, although that might be changing from a dexterity standpoint with Kabuto Sumo. So this is, just a solid product. And they've run now a number of these multi-game campaigns to very good success, easily 6-digit success each time. And I have to love what they've been putting out because they've been so solid and so consistent in their offerings, and none have really fallen flat. Now, I would argue that with any of these multi-game campaigns, you're always best off with not getting all of them. I mean, it's always offered as oh, it's this big saving, you should get all of them. Well, it's also less money if you don't buy all of them, right? It's more saving if you spend $40 and don't spend $90, even if $90 is going to save you what the price would have been for $120. I'm still only spending $40. Right? That logic always is if I buy more, I save more. Well, sometimes, but you're also spending more regardless. So this is just another really solid run campaign. They're offering great shipping. They're offering great prices for these games. You can swap in and out. You get a few bit of promos, which aren't make it or break it, but there's enough there that to entice you in the first place if you're one of those that's on the fence. And they've been relatively good priced in terms of comparison to post-campaign offerings. So I just give them a lot of kudos and a lot of credit, and they're really branching out for a company that's named Board Game Tables. They're putting out a great product of a publishing aspect, and this is just another offering that ended in June. Now, this last one is going to be a little bit divisive, but I'm going to call Skyrise because it's technically ending on July 1 at 12 p.m., but I'm going to call this as the 4th game because This was a very big surprise, and I never know with Roxley. The thing with Roxley is that talking about solid and talking about consistency, but talking about all over the freaking map, that is Roxley. You know, you're talking Brass Birmingham, you're talking Radlands, and now you're talking Skyrise. You know, those three games really have nothing in common in terms of similarities and mechanisms. You see companies that typically stay more towards one end. Like when I think of Garfield games, I think of more of this, you know, very elegant, very nuanced worker placement Euro style game, or I think of CMON and I think of this miniature thrashing type game with maybe some area control. And I think of Roxley and I just go, well, Roxley, right? And this is no different. Now, this is Skyrise. This is a theme, but also a little bit of a redoing, a twist on a previous game called Metropolis. And it's an auction resource management set collection style game with bidding. And sort of the bidding style is you're going to be placing these buildings adjacent to each other, and all the buildings have bidding numbers on them, and the one who places the largest one out there is the one that stays out there, and all the others are collected back in. And where you place them is going to be in different districts, and it's going to earn you different tokens and different bonuses depending on where they're located. There's also going to be set collections, and there's going to be resource management, and it's deluxified like a lot of the other Roxley games have been. Minimalist for 49, collectors for 75, and with Roxley you again will get a very good price point similar to Leder, where it's going to be significantly better. I mean, look at this smattering of games, right? That is just crazy difference. And I love it. I love it. You know you're going to get a premium product. The only difference, the only question I have is because I look at like the last game of Radlands. I have the base game for Radlands, and I picked it up for $18 at retail with shipping afterwards. So like $24 or $22, whatever it was. And I look at it from the essential standpoint, and I go, can I get that for $30 later if I don't want the deluxe? Because Radlands, the deluxeifications in these situations, there's no gameplay content. There's nothing of the promo nature. It's just purely aesthetically pleasing plastic, essentially, and or wood. But I don't look at that as a necessity in a lot of these games. I have very few games that I look at it from that standpoint. So that's been the biggest confuddling, confusing, muddying the waters sort of thing for me when I look at Roxley games, because I love Radlands. And I think I would really, really like this game. This is a perfect weight for me. This is a perfect length for me. This is a perfect depth for me. There's a relatively straightforward rule set. I've read the rules. They're on the game page. They're great. But is it going to be worth it to get it now because I'm not as big on the deluxeifications, or can I get it for a later price for that's, you know, something I can, you know, save money on elsewhere in terms of whatever. So yeah, that's my big issue with Roxley. And I say that as someone who's probably going to end up with this game in their collection. Like, just like I said with Radlands. Now, do I miss the Radlands playmats? A little bit. Do I, you know, find them $20 or $30 worth of missing? Probably not. And that's more of the aspect that I'm wondering about when we start to get down to like the Key to the City and the collector's edition here with the 3D Center Island. Meh. You know, I look at Foundations of Rome and I go, if that Foundations of Rome was a $35, $40 game, I'd be in my collection. I'm not paying $150 for it. Now, this obviously is $150, but this is $75 with shipping afterwards. And you can get, I think, additional deluxeifications down here with pre-washing, which is all the rage, and wooden token pack. If anything, the wooden tokens are the most interesting aspect. So it's a standard edition with the wooden tokens. But I just don't know. So here you go. The stretch goals, great, but all non-gameplay. So take that for what you will. If you're a blinger, then you're going to get the $75 one. But if you're not, you might be better at retail. Either way, it's killing it. I love their products. There you go. Number 4. Now, let's make it over to the games that I played. My top 4 games. And this is a very tough month. I'm not necessarily going to give an order. The order is not reflective of my most to worst or anything like that. But 4 games, outstanding games, all of which will have reviews from me coming in some shape or form in the near future. But let's just go straight over the one that you've probably already seen. And this is Marvel United, X-Men. I finally got my pledge from CMON. I have almost all the expansions. I decided not to pick up a couple, so I won't be able to rank all of the expansions, but just based on the reviews, based on the comments, based on the rule books, I can already tell that 1 or 2 of the expansions just aren't going to be for me. I have no interest in picking them up. So I would argue that this base game alone, base game alone, hear me out here, is a much better improved product, a 2.0 version, even maybe a 3.0 version compared to the original Marvel United. And as I said in my review, the Too Lazy Didn't Watch summary of my original review for this is basically that this is a 2.0, maybe even a 3.0 version compared to the original Marvel United. And now it's got X-Men, which I have always preferred X-Men. I have always been an X-Men person over Avengers. So give me X-Men any day of the week. and it just makes it all the better. It eliminates the criticisms that I have, especially a few of them from the original, especially from the retail. The big retail aspect of it when you played just the base game alone was that the difficulty was not good enough and the variability was not good enough, especially in terms of the villains that you were be able to face, and you really needed an expansion. You really needed the Kickstarter exclusive box, and this now gives you the option of the anti-heroes, which are Mystique and Magneto, which gives you a potential of 4 different villains in the core box. You can play essentially one versus all. You can play solo against the game, or you can play cooperative, and that's the other aspect, along with some increasing difficulty cards and superheroes versus super villains with the cards that go on the one versus all side of things to give it an extra flair and extra nuance. It makes it an absolutely essential game for people getting into the hobby that are looking for something like this. The miniatures are top notch, the production is great, and that's before you get into any of the expansion characters, because the other aspect of this is, and this is the biggest thing that was the other criticism in the original, was that some of the characters were just blah, especially on the hero side of things. The villains have been almost uniquely all great, but some of the heroes were just like meh, and they've really added a lot of text to some of the cards, but not in a bad way, and so you can really get a good experience of uniqueness among the heroes themselves, and that is another thing that really sets it apart and makes it so much better than the original. I would never buy the original. I would never recommend buying the original. I would only buy this core if you're looking for something, and then you can get something else on top of it. My recommendation would probably just be, if you want nothing else, get one of the Kickstarter goodie boxes exclusives, stretch goals. Probably the X-Men one, because again, I'm partial to X-Men. But there you go. That's why this was the first game on this list. The second game is going to surprise you. I imported a copy of Die Wandelnden Türme, and now this is the Wandering Towers if you're not translatable or interpreting my German very well. And this was featured on the Board Game Geek news from a while back. And this is a Kramer and Kiesling. This has not been brought over to North America yet. It is only really available in German, but it comes with the English rules as well. And it's a really cool concept. It's not going to appeal to everybody, but I can already tell you that I would be really surprised. I'm going to put this out there right now. I would be shocked if you don't see this on the shortlist for Spiel nominated in some way or shape or form in 2023. I think it's that good. It's that solid. It's not going to appeal to everybody. The dynamics, the chaoticness, the luck factor is definitely there. So it's not going to appeal to you heavy strategic gamers, but it's going to be really good because essentially what you have here, and we'll see if we can, no, that didn't blow up. So the basic gist of this game is that you have cards in your hand and you're playing them one at a time on your turn as your action. You have cards that are going to be either movement points for wizards, movement points for towers. And then you just do whatever it says. Now you'll have some cards that have both, so you can choose which one. But the gist of it is that you're moving whatever you're moving, and the wizards can go on the towers, but the towers can move themselves. The towers can stack on each other. You can move any number of towers that are there. And then you have this Raven Castle, which is the end depot. You're trying to get all your wizards exactly moved into there as they go around in a clockwise manner. And the first one to get all of their wizards in there wins. Sound easy? Well, it is, but it's also a whole heck of a lot of fun with a little bit of memory and a little bit of take that and a little bit of just chaoticness that is really, I haven't really seen any before like this. And it plays up to 5, and it's absolutely tremendous. I would recommend it, probably a 3 to 5. You can play it with 2. It's definitely good at 2, but it's going to be best at 3, 4, and 5 just from the chaotic craziness in a very good, fun, thematic incorporation way. So that is why it's on my list, and I got it for $40 shipped on Amazon Germany. Crazy. I was just, Googling it, and just randomly, all of a sudden, once it came up, and I said, well, I can't turn that price down. So there you go. It's a keeper. It's a keeper. And like I said, it's going to make a lot of people's lists, especially from a family style of game, from an easy incorporation, play with anybody aspect, with a good bit of nuance that is just easy to play and light enough that you can play other games in the same night. So I love it from that aspect. Going a completely different direction, we're going to talk about Dominant Species Marine. I was able to play this. I got this to the table. This is a very, very intriguing game to me. I picked it up at retail. I actually pre-ordered it from GMT. I'm never doing that again. GMT, I really don't like you for not being able to fulfill Mystery Wizard. I missed that game. I wanted that game to fulfill. That's a whole nother side story. But Dominant Species Marine, the sequel to Dominant Species from Chad Jensen, who... actually, I think he died before this was, he had cancer, and it was a whole tribute to him on the Board Game Geek forums because this was his last design. And I like it because I think it's more accessible. I think it's easier to get through, and it does things in a more unique way that I have not really played anything like. And it's a little bit of resource management. It's a little bit of worker placement. And I'll blow up a picture of the board here so you can see. It's sort of this modular board, and people were saying that they didn't really like it. Some of the people who played Dominant Species, it's not all the complexities, it's not all the actions that they were used to, and it was a little bit too streamlined. No, I love it. It's streamlined. This over here, this action display is essentially what you're placing your workers on. And the very interesting aspect of this, and I've never seen this done before, and probably it's in a bunch of other games that I've just never got my hands on because they're too heavy for me, but what you're doing is you're placing your workers, and once you place your worker in one of these rows, then you can only place it either to a slot to the right or in a slot below. So eventually you get down to the bottom here and there are no more free slots, and then you have to do the free action, which is retrieve all your workers and then start back up at the top. But if you want to place your first worker down here in Wanderlust or Speciation, you can. And that's cool, but it's going to give you less time to do some of the other stuff, and it's going to give you less adaptation. The other really, really cool thing, the other huge highlight of this game for me, and I'll go across to the other side of the board, is these evolution cards, which are freaking cool. These are like the event cards, and you get to pick one of them when you go over here to the evolution aspect. And they just crazy things happen. The yellow here is when something comes into play. When this card even enters the board, something happens. But they all have special effects that are going to change potentially the dynamics of the board in the first place, which was really cool. And you can adjust how many of these are in the deck, because this is basically the end game condition when you run out of those cards, or when you reach like the meteor card that comes into like the open empty slot here, or when it gets down to the bottom. I can't remember, something like that. But that's the aspect of things. And then you can buy these special workers and can control them, and they can give you special slots over here that you can't otherwise use. So it's a great deep game. Now it's going to be a little bit harder to get to the table because it's longer than almost a lot of the stuff in my collection in terms of that length and that variety. So that's the other aspect that you have to know, because I mean, it's still going to run you like 2.5 hours. So it's not going to be with a bunch of other games on a game night. It's going to be that one alone. The other thing I did not mention is you all start out with evolution traits that are going to be like individual traits for your individual species that you're making. And those are really cool too, because they all seem overpowered in a different way, giving you a uniqueness, a strategy to incorporate from the get-go. So I was actually on the fence with this game. I put off playing it and being able to play it for a super long time. Like I said, I was one of the pre-orders on GMT, so I got it before almost anyone else. So to just be able to play it now is, I think, like probably more than a year. So either way, it's staying right now. It's staying right now. Will it hit the table a whole lot? No, but it will definitely fill a niche that I don't have out there already. So last up is going to be then something completely different, and this is Cardboard Alchemy's Mission Catastrophe. This is the pandemic-esque spin with more of a cube-based system where you are basically Captain is Dead sort of way, where you're managing or mitigating areas of the ship, trying to keep them repaired, trying to find certain resources, and trying to then escape either before everyone else or alongside everyone else, because not only does this have a solo gameplay, it has a competitive as well as a cooperative. It was really interesting to me because I totally missed this one on crowdfunding the first time around, and I looked it up, I saw the reviews. I had to buy this one secondhand because it really isn't available on the retail market at all from Cardboard Alchemy, and which is really strange because it's a little bit deluxeified. It's got a little bit of a deluxe insert. It's got an expansion that was included at one of the higher pledge levels, but you just can't get it. And so I'm not sure if that's going to change, but it's been out for a while now. It's a 2022 release, but I'm thinking early 2022 at worst. Maybe even to backers at end of 2021. I can't really speak, but I haven't heard anything about retail. You go onto a site like Board Game Oracle and you can't find it anywhere. You can't really buy it anywhere online. Cardboard Alchemy doesn't have any for sale on its website. It's not like one of those personal web shops. You can get it there. So there's not really any availability. And it has this card-driven room system that is modular in setup. And then you can also go against two enemies in the cooperative or in the solo play, depending on how you want to do it. And it just gives you variability, and you're trying to make it to the escape pod, but the power has to be on. You have oxygen, you have to have all the resources, and then you have to be the first one that's there, and then you have cards that allow you to take that. And if the cards get too filled up with these cubes, then something happens with the room. You're not able to use the room at all for whatever this purpose is. And I can't find a picture of it, but you also have the shipboard. Actually, it's in the lower right here, where you're taking the cubes off of. So then certain parts of the bigger overall ship, if that gets affected, then you start getting closer to the end game condition, because every single turn something is taken off of there and placed on the other one. So it's the whole pandemic vibe, just done in a different way. And so far it's got me pleasantly happy with it. I'm not sure if it's going to be like a top-notch want to play all the time, but I just don't have enough depth of play with it, especially from the difference between the cooperative and the competitive. So I don't really have a preferred mode yet. So we'll see how that sort of turns out as I get more gameplay and as I play it with more of my game group and my family to see, okay, how does this compare to the loop? How does this compare to Pandemic Iberia? How does this compare to the other competitive and cooperative things that I love, especially on the cooperative side of things? So that's why it's the 4th game on my list. There you go. That is my top of June look back, games played, and crowdfunding campaigns. So what was on your radar? What did you back? Now that's a whole nother video. What did I miss? What was your top played? What was your top campaigns? Whether you backed it or whether you were just super interested by it or why it was super interesting to you, regardless. That was June 2022. Again, great video for looking back a year from now. Are these games going to be still in my collection? And spoilers, they all are. As well as where are these campaigns in 2023 at this time? So I'm setting myself up for the future. It makes the life easy. And, you know, got some reviews coming out for a couple of these at some point too. There you go. Have a great day. Stay classy. Subscribe if you like it more where this came from. And as always, I just appreciate you watching in the first place. I have a Patreon down below if you like that sort of thing, but thumb it just so that you can tell the YouTube algorithm to recommend me to other people so I can help grow the channel. I'm trying to get to 10K by the end of the year. Because that'd be sweet. See you around. Got a toddler trying to get in the locked door right now, so I got to go wrap this up. Sweetie, I'm doing a video. Okay? I can't talk right now. That's a box. Okay? You can't have that. Go back out by brothers and mama, please. Daddy's got to finish doing this video. That's egg night. You like egg night, don't you? Here, give Daddy a kissy and then you go back out, okay? Okay, go back out. Crocodile. No, not in our mouth. No, not in our mouth. Uh-oh, his mouth shut. Okay. Yes. Open. I don't know if that one's mouth opens, though. Does it? Okay, go show mommy. Go show mommy your... Okay, go fight out there. No, Pan Pan.